There was a book by Neil Postman, who was an author. And in the book, he says that all the world is a stage and we're all just actors in it, right? If you've ever
Mhm.
heard that term before, it's been used a lot for like folks in theater. But the way Neil Postman did it, and he is um, a great author, is we're always on a stage where
Mhm.
whether you're at home, whether you're at work, right? So for example, who I am at work is not the same person I am at home. Who I am with my families is not the same way I'm with my friends, and who I'm with my
Mhm.
friends is not the same way I'm with my wife. So in a way, what he was trying to convey is that we're kind of, without knowing it, we're all actors in a way, because we're not. Yes, everyone is the same person to an extent, right? Like, but there's going to be certain things that change, right? There's going to be certain
Mhm.
mannerisms that change. Like, there's no way possible that everyone says, I am the same person I am 24/7. So what you're saying is so whoever you are at home is the same person you are at work. How does that work? Because at work, you're actually forced to become a professional, which is an actor. It's a role, right? You're a professional.
Right.
You become whatever your title is at work. So if you are a teacher, for those 8 hours, you are acting as a teacher. You are thinking as a teacher would do. You're not thinking as what James would do. If you are a police officer, okay, you are not. I hope not, but you're not in your house moving the same way you would at work, right?
Right.
And interestingly enough, sometimes when people are done acting, quote unquote, they need that moment to kind of decompress, that moment to kind of like, okay, I'm going into my new role. It's just like an act. Right? So
Right.
it's like sometimes when you come home from work, you just need a moment to yourself before you then walk into the home who has a whole different set of characters and people. And you just need a
Mhm.
moment to kind of like, and then also prepare mentally for that. So we're all actors at the end of the day, but it's not to say that anybody's fake or say anything bad about folks. It's just we always adapt. So,
Yeah, it's kind of, it's really interesting that you brought that up in that way because there's a term well, so there's things, like stimming, so, like, with your hands, maybe you're a
mm,
tapper. Maybe you're in a situation where you can't, and so you kind of suppress that and put that mask up, especially for women, I'm learning too, a lot of women are getting diagnosed later in their life with autism because they're so high masking. And then there's the term of unmasking, which is when you're, essentially by yourself or with someone you trust, taking those masks off and allowing yourself to stim freely, to nerd out on your niche. Even some people allow themselves to go nonverbal because that's what makes them most comfortable.
mm,
And so there's masking and unmasking, and then the amount of exhaustion, I guess, that comes with masking. So needing that moment to, decompress, to unmask, to almost like let your tics out
mhm,
so that like your muscles can relax, your mind can relax. That's
mm,
totally a thing. So it's interesting to hear, I guess, kind of different people on the spectrum, even neurotypicals talk about the mask you put on in certain situations and then what that feels like when you take that off as well.
That's deep. And actually, before we go too far, let me also introduce you. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Not So Business as Usual. Today, I have a very special episode with a very special guest, Chy Lane. Hello, Cheyenne.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So today we're going very not so business as usual because we are actually going to talk about autism, and we're going to talk about autism in the workplace. And Cheyenne's going to share a little bit of her journey and her professional career and what it's like to be diagnosed, what I would consider later in life because she was diagnosed in her 20s. And how has that impacted her career path? But then we're also going to talk about like on the flip side of that, right? Like the benefits or the advantage that someone who does have autism may have in certain roles, and how can we also leverage technology, leverage AI to create more roles that are autistic friendly opportunities. When I was looking at some data, I saw that there was about, I think the unemployment rate for folks who are diagnosed with autism is about 60%, right? Which is significantly high for a group of people who are completely capable of the core functions of a job. Maybe you don't want them to necessarily be a professional public speaker, but there are an abundance of roles and things out there. So definitely want to help spread awareness and talk about this gap a little bit further. But so what I'll do is Cheyenne, I'll dive right in, and can you just tell us like a little bit about, let's split the two journeys. Like we'll segue into the career path, but like let's talk about autism for a second, because I feel like as far as we've come with autism, I still think there's a lack in an understanding of what autism is and how does it impact someone's life growing up. So let's go back to when you were just a little baby and you were like, you were diagnosed later in life. So that must have meant that, really you kind of went through your most of your childhood and even your in your adulthood, just you were carrying this, but didn't necessarily know what it was. So when you were a younger child, like, did anyone notice anything different? Were there any signs, or did you have a hard time making friends or anything like that?
Oddly enough, I noticed it without knowing exactly what it was. I hear stories from my family all the time of, "You were the easiest baby." You made no noise, you weren't, rambling or like, "Look what I can do," and, all of this stuff. You didn't really like the attention. If I always had a little backpack, my dad always made sure with, a book in it, usually a science book or an animal book, and a bunch of art supplies. I was never a TV kid. I loved learning, and I noticed really early on that I liked being around adults more, and I couldn't relate to kids as much. I noticed that playing pretend was kind of hard for me. I didn't get the premise or the reason or have fun with it necessarily. It was almost in a way like embarrassing. Like I felt like a stage fright kind of playing pretend with people. I remember being in, gosh, I think 4th or 5th grade, and we had to do a report on, a musician that we loved. And so people had, born in the 90s, in sync, Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, all of this stuff. And here I am, 8, 9 years old, and I'm like, let me tell you about Ray Charles. I was different, and it was painfully obvious that I was different, but I always just thought maybe I was just weird, maybe I was dorky. You get the term a lot, like, you have an old soul,
Yeah.
or wise beyond your years kind of thing. And I just noticed that my interests were so different, and the things that I noticed were so different. And to the point, of course, socially that was impactful, but it was also, I was starting to feel maybe like shame, frustrations, wondering, why aren't people noticing the things I do? Why don't they feel the way that I do? Why don't people, really want to talk to me? Why can't I look at people? Like, I get a little nervous with eye contact. So really just, little things like that where I noticed I wasn't as comfortable with the human experience, for lack of better words, I guess, than other people. I wasn't having as easy of a time with understanding, essentially how to be like everyone else, because I absolutely wasn't.
Mm,
And that led to certain frustrations with my parents, with my family, not understanding maybe why I'm, highly sensitive in some areas, why some things click and some things don't. Even I would plan my meals. And I had no idea, learning at 27 I'm autistic. You have these moments of like, "Oh, that's why I did that." I would plan my first bite, my last bite, and every, bite in between, and every route to get there.
mm,
Just because, heaven forbid, what if your last bite is awful? Or, the
mm,
bite before your last bite was better, and then, like, you ended on the last one and it wasn't as good. And I would
wow.
think about stuff like that all day and then not realize, like, no one else does that. So just, little things like that where I knew before anyone else knew, um, before I had even gone to any sort of professional, those were just, like, kind of the key indicators, just, like, as, like, a little kid.
Wow. Did that sounds like a lot of weight you had to carry, to kind
Yeah.
of think through that. So it's like, well, others are kind of like moving. You're also like carrying a lot of weight on your shoulders, trying to move at the same pace as everybody else too.
Mhm.
So that must have been
Yeah.
really, really tough.
Yeah, and
Wow.
explaining to people how it feels is hard because you almost don't know how to articulate it.
Mhm.
yourself, or explain like how big it feels or how confusing it feels. And there, wasn't really a term for it back then too. So it wasn't something, people understood why I walked on my tippy toes as a kid. They just thought I was, cute and dainty and, like a little ballerina and
Yeah.
stuff. And that's like a key indicator. I had no idea. No one teaches you these things.
Right. And did you do well in school too?
I did really well in school curriculum-wise. I loved school, and I was always friends with my teachers. I was the kid that, not teacher's pet-wise, because I hated, passing things out and doing that stuff, but I was the, "Can I stay an hour after school with my photography teacher so you can teach me, film photography in the darkroom?
Mm,
Can you give me an extra book to read, that you personally recommend?" So it was
mm.
something where I really loved learning. I loved the curriculum. I loved teachers. I hated the social aspect of it. That
Yeah,
was so hard. And you know the answer to a question, but you don't want to raise your hand. People
right.
were awful. People are
Yeah,
really mean in school. I can only imagine what it's like now, however
yeah.
many years later.
Yeah, it's school is tough, especially when people don't understand something, right? If they don't understand it, you're just it's not it's not broken down, really. It's just weird. It goes into that bucket.
Yeah.
Weird, weird, strange, loser,
Yeah.
weird. So
Yeah.
it's
Normal,
like
not normal.
exactly, right? So everyone is expected to kind of be bound to the same swim lane, and if you don't swim in that same lane, then you're kind of outcasted and looked at as very much so differently, and then it's not then it's like then there's the intent of trying to make that person look then there's it's like first it's like, okay, we have identified someone who could potentially be different.
Mhm.
Now let's spread this word about them different, and then puts them in scenarios to in heighten the difference in them and make it so that we don't embrace them. So yeah, school is very it can be very brutal, and people can be very rough there. And I feel
Yeah.
like the tough part about that is that's the part that starts to shape your life a little bit, right? Like high school, it's giving you a insight into what life will look like in the future. It doesn't define you necessarily. It's just it's, if you're surrounded by all this diversity, all these different people all day, and they're all moving and thinking and treating you a certain way, you're going to start to think, well, that's what the world is. Or some people are lucky enough where they're like, I can't wait to get out of here and so I can see what the world is really like. I feel like there's two scenarios that can potentially
Mm.
happen. I feel like, unfortunately, more often than not, more people end up in the, "Okay, that's what the world is like," and then they've accepted that. I was listening to are you spiritual by chance?
Yeah, not religious, but definitely
Not religious, you're spiritual?
the
Okay.
universe is working for sure.
Gotcha. I was listening to something and they were talking about the nervous system. And you are what you say you are, right? So the nervous system doesn't know when you're playing and when you're being truthful or when you're upset and you're just saying bad things. So if people are starting to say certain things about me, and first of all, my nervous system is already receiving that as that's what people believe. But then
Mhm.
if I start to say it about myself, then it's like, okay, you are a loser
Yeah.
because people are saying it and you're now saying it to yourself. That's what you are. But if you start to say like, I'm actually a winner. They think
Mhm.
that, but I'm actually a winner. It reverse engineers everything. And it's almost like the more you're able to pour back into yourself, the more someone else is saying about you, you're able to kind of push that back or push that narrative
Mhm.
back. Or you've heightened your own nervous system so much where that stuff just has no, it just sounds like air at the end of the day. Fortunately, in high school, kids don't know that, right? There's a lot of things that you need development on to be an adult in this world today that I feel like they just don't get in high school.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
people bring up
empathize with
taxes, sure, but I mean, you
yeah,
don't learn how to I mean, self-regulation. There's a class on, self-regulation or anxiety or, crisis management or something. Thank God I know the Pythagorean theorem, but, I'm over here in a fetal position in the bathroom crying, so it doesn't
yeah,
help me here.
yeah. And then so now you left. Did you go to a 4-year university?
Yeah, so I actually when I was a junior in high school in Las Vegas, there is a program at the community college where you can actually join the college, you have, I think it was 3 high school classes that I had with actual high school students.
Mhm.
The rest of them were all actual college classes at the community college. If you didn't tell anyone you were in high school, other than your professor, no one knew. You got to choose your own class, choose a major, and essentially it was all dual credit. So it counted towards your high school diploma and towards college. And that's kind of another indicator as someone on the spectrum is I have done probably more college than most 30-year-old, almost 30-year-olds than I know, although I have absolutely no degree to show it. Most of which, to be honest with you, it's not even the completion part as much as financially it's difficult when you don't have, family support, parental support, if you weren't set up for success. Those kinds of things are really difficult, and that's, another thing where employers might look at that negatively of, okay, you've, attended universities, but, never completed kind of thing. And it's one of those things where you need experience to get a job, but you need the job for experience.
Mhm.
You need money for college so you can get a job, but you need a job so you can have money to go to college kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
And so, and that's tough because honestly, college was the best experience for someone like me ever. It was everything that they told you that it should be in high school,
Mhm.
where you learn. I mean, I remember in high school learning the different ways of thinking. There are people who are visual learners, tactical learner or tactile learners. You learn about people learning all different ways, different styles of note taking. But then you go to your high school classes and they tell you, okay, you have to take Cornell notes or else you're going to get graded on your notes. And it's like, okay, so I have to take Cornell notes on this lesson on all of the different types of learners that there are, but I have to do it the way that you are telling me works.
Mhm.
And so, the public school system, it's one system for millions of people who are
Mhm.
all their own individual, their own thinker. They have their own experiences, but they expect one system to work perfectly for everyone. And that's why I loved college, because instead they were like, here's the information. I'll tell it to you. I'll show it to you. You can show up essentially if you want to, but here's the information. You absorb it how you see fit. I am here if you need me. I've never met a professor that's not there when you
Mhm.
really need them.
Mhm.
But college was so autonomous, and I realized that I thrive in that kind of environment to where the teamwork that does have to be done, it's all people who they literally chose to be in that class. They
Yes.
probably even have the same major as you. You already have something in common, and for an autistic person, knowing you have something in common already, it's like, because I have, what am I going to talk about?
Right.
What do I do with my hands? I think about that with people singing happy birthday. No one taught me what to do with my hands or where to look when someone sings happy birthday to me. No one. It's little things like that where if the world were given information and then told there are different ways of absorbing it, if the world were like college where you could choose how you learned and what you can sit in the back of the class with your hood on and not talk to anyone, or you can be front and center, you can choose webinar, you can be in person, I think that people really, really, really truly thrive when they are given the environment to do so.
Yes.
um there's and does definitely let me know if I'm rambling at all
No, no,
too.
you're good.
um there's a quote where I actually have it tattooed on my arm, and it says, "Love her, but leave her wild." And it's by Atticus, since, podcast. Shout out to Atticus. He's a great poet. My dad always taught me growing up, little kids see flowers when they're hiking and they want to, pick the flower and bring a, bouquet home or put one in their hair. And my dad was like, do you see how pretty these flowers are? And how gorgeous, it makes this place. If you pick that flower, it's gonna die, and you're
Mhm.
taking that flower from this place. So
Mm.
you're taking it for yourself, for your own joy, putting it somewhere where it's not gonna thrive, and then eventually it dies, and then it's wasted, and there was it didn't even pollinate. It didn't,
Mm.
give nectar. It didn't do anything but exist and then cease. So
Didn't
if
have a
you
chance to.
really exactly, exactly, and if you really, really love something, you should leave it wild. You should let it be how it is and nurture that because it's going to be so much better. You know, if a plant isn't doing well, you don't curse the plant and you don't sit there and say, why aren't you growing like the rest of them? And, why aren't you doing well? And, I give you water, and even all plants need different things. Even the same kind of plant in two different pots might need two different things. So
Yeah.
if you curse a plant for not growing, it's not going to do anything. But if you change its environment and give it the things that it needs, it's
Yeah.
going to look like that guy.
Yeah, like some plants need more lights than others, right? You can't just you're giving some good gems right here, snaps for you because
I love the stuff. Yes.
it's so true, right? Like if you truly do love something the way you have to first of all, it's so deep what you're saying on so many levels because if you truly do love something, you accept them for what they are.
As they are currently as
And
well.
you don't try to, like, change them because
Hmm.
then you're making it more of a conditional love, which is, "If you match what I think you should be, I will love you." But
Hmm.
even though you're doing your thing now and you're doing it's just not it's funny, right? Because it's like, on one hand, it's you can leave a flower, let it grow wild, and maybe it doesn't grow as fast as you want it, or maybe it doesn't bloom when you want, etc.
Hmm.
Doing its thing through its natural course. It just doesn't necessarily fit what you want. And the frustration is not really shouldn't really be with the plant because the plant is doing what it's supposed to do. The frustration is it doesn't match what you want and
Hmm.
you're now projecting that anger towards the plant and now you damage it because it's like and it's that's so parallel to humans, right? Like
Yeah.
we perceive people a certain way and then when they don't match the perception or they don't match what we want them to be,
Hmm.
we quote unquote fix them or suggest that you got to change this, but really what we're doing is we're finagling it so that it matches what we want. Even though maybe they're matching what we want, we've completely removed them from their natural habitat. On the shell, they look exactly how you want them to be, but internally they're suffering and they're slowly dying because you've taken them out of their so yes, they some things will adapt to the environment. There's an adaptation, right? But the adaptation, it's most of the time is on the outside, is not always on the inside. And while the outside may be looking like, oh, there's an adaptation going on, the inside is like, I just need to be back in my own habitat or I'm going to be suffering here. But I will adapt because I'm trying to just blend with everything else.
Yeah.
And that is 100% human. And that's 100% too, even like, when you were talking about college, I can relate, right? I struggled. So when I was younger, they diagnosed me with ADHD, right? And now that I'm older, I would like to challenge that to a part where maybe I was just not challenged enough as a child. Maybe, similar
Hmm.
like you wanted more functional things to do. Like you wanted to like okay, how am I applying this to life, right? Or
Hmm.
or fine, like, okay, I learned this in the book. Now let's try it out. Like I'm learning so I can actually touch it, not just I don't
Right.
want to learn just to learn. And for me, I struggled, but when I was put into like science classes or I was put into like really focused areas and like I found out we were going to be doing experiments, like that kept me up the whole night one time because I was like, I'm so excited for this experiment. Like the just for the simple fact that I can say I've done an experiment
Right.
is what,
Right.
like, gave me such a high and such a rush. I didn't care. It wasn't like, "Okay, we're gonna go read chapter 6." It's like, "Dude,
You're
we're
doing
doing
it.
lab stuff." So, like, I'm super pumped for it. So
Mhm.
that's when I started to excel, right? And when it came to the focus or I was gravitating to that, I also found myself when I was younger gravitating towards the people who were different. And
Mhm.
I actually found them more interesting and entertaining because the people who were different didn't carry this. It was a cool trade-off because on one hand, I was carrying this weight of like, I don't want to be judged and all this other stuff. And they were carrying that similar weight in different ways. But when I kind of started to kind of group myself with them a little bit, they were they kind of looked at me as like, he's an outsider, but he gets us. And that
Yeah.
makes us feel awesome. And I remember when I would connect and, like, the stupid things we would laugh at, and I would, like, giggle and do, like, something I probably wouldn't do with, like, other people, but it was very liberating. It
Yeah.
was very liberating to just be yourself and to see the mosaic. Mosaics are I it was like a bunch of just pieces put together. It was not just
Mhm.
a clean cut, completely polished, and I was like, "This seems fun because, like, let's pull this part apart. Let's look at this. Let's see what that does. Let's see what this does." It was just so when it comes to connecting with people who are like-minded or being in a education environment where you're, like, around like-minded people, I agree
Mhm.
with you because I found myself finding more friendships with people who were different
Right.
because they didn't have a lot of their minds were so much more opened to, like, things.
Yeah.
It wasn't, like, settled on one thing and in a it was like it was so open and was like wild ideas, and
Mhm.
yeah, they were wild ideas, but it was just the fact that it's like, dude, like,
At least they
what?
were having them.
Yeah, like, dude, you guys ever think about, like, the moon and, like, how long it would take us to walk to the moon? Like,
Yeah.
these are the types of conversations but
But
it
it's
was fun.
so stimulating.
Yeah.
Yes.
How many steps? Like,
Exactly.
"Okay, let's do the math." And then it
Yeah.
was like then it turned into, "Okay, we would go for a walk." Okay,
Right.
like, we've walked approximately X percent, like, to the like, that's
To the moon.
what
Yeah.
the things would drift, and it was like, "Okay." Where on the other side, it's like, "Hey, did you guys see what happened on this reality show last night?" And it was just like, "Yeah, I kinda I
See,
you know."
it's the same and
Yeah.
cookie cutter, and that's I was the same way. Granted, I say I always gravitated towards, maybe the outcasts or whatever. I was also an outcast. It's probably why I gravitated to them. But I loved people that didn't think the same as everyone else. And there's something so liberating about the moment when you decide you don't need to be like everyone else, or that worry of like, how do I fit in? And when you are able to then kind of have that moment of like, how do I not, but not in a negative way. And that's something that took me, I'm 29, gonna be 30 this year. It took me until, probably yesterday, trying to see, okay, not how can I be like everyone else, but what sets me apart from everyone else. Especially like going through, my journey right now with, currently looking for work. It's difficult because, you look at all of these roles, and I was the youngest director in Zappos history. I was a director of a department at 24. You think you think you got it all figured out, but then you're applying for these roles and you see on LinkedIn posted 2 hours ago 100 plus applicants. And then you hear that, they're using AI to just pull the 10 best resumes that fit these keywords. And it could be the same thing across the board, but one company might use the term client and one company might use the term customer. And because you said customer and not client, didn't pull it. And so I was finding it difficult, I guess, how do you fit what someone needs while also setting yourself apart? And it's the same thing that, you kind of said earlier with the plants, that, you need to love the plant as is, how it is now, as you currently have it. Not even just, I'm going to love you if you become this, but there's even harm in, I love you now for what you are. Oddly enough, the harm comes when they say, like, you have so much potential. And I know that that sounds so weird because, like, it could be a good thing, but there's also that pressure of, now what are you gonna do? What are
You gotta
you,
yeah.
gonna be? Yeah, like, I love you now and you're gonna do great things. And I love when people say that because I'm like, I'm glad you think so. But at the same time, now it's like, now I gotta go do great things. And
Yeah.
there's, just little things like that that, people might not think about in terms of someone's brain working differently. So maybe that's something I'm struggling with, or maybe that's why I'm not getting interviews because my brain works differently. Maybe I don't know exactly how they want that description worded, under my
Yeah.
role. Maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on, the outcome, of the numbers and not what the role responsibility was. But then it's also personal preference. It depends on who the hiring manager is and who they see in their mind, is a good fit. You have no idea. You can have in your mind who's a good fit, but I mean, it's essentially just like dating.
Yes.
You're never gonna find anyone that has everything, and the
Mhm.
cool thing is finding someone who doesn't and loving that anyway. I fully believe there's such a thing as toxic positivity. I would
Mhm.
much rather have someone sit with me and say, "This sucks, I'm sorry," instead of, "Everything's gonna be okay." 'Cause it's like, "Yeah, I'm sure, but right now it sucks. Like, can we sit in this for a while?"
Yeah.
So I feel like if people just didn't have this preconceived notion or idea of what you should be, or maybe what the person holding the role should look like, and more so like, can you perform the responsibilities, but like, what separates you, or what can you bring that maybe is unique that I, as a hiring manager, haven't thought of before. If you're hiring, within a certain industry, maybe challenge yourself and hire someone who has that role experience, but maybe not that industry experience,
Mhm.
because they bring a, third party perspective essentially. It's really just once you get an idea of what you should be or what someone else should be out of your head, it opens up your world to how amazing things are that are already there. That, be it in nature, in college, and all of that. In movies, I never look at the main character. I can tell you all the posters in their room, though. I know so much about that main character. If
Mhm.
people noticed more than just the center of the screen and where you're supposed to look, it would be so inclusive and I think
Mhm.
accepting and exciting.
Mhm.
I think companies would go really far.
I would say too, like, something to consider is you definitely wanna be around a hiring manager who is looking at the flower and wants them to grow wild. You may have come across a lot of people who are like, "I wanna pluck you over here." So even though it may turn into an interview, it may turn into an opportunity, it's also at the same time the process of removing that wildflower. Maybe the universe just playing, just giving a different thought to it, but maybe the universe is also in a way shielding you for the right role. Meaning the universe is saying, "Okay, we need this flower to grow, and it's for the sake of our humanity here. We can't have too many disruptions." So the universe is going to, in a way, do its job and protect you
Mhm.
from the wrong element. Because let's say you did get a job and you're getting like a plethora of options and you get there and they're like, yoink, get over there. And it's like,
Right.
and then like the toxic process starts to happen. And that flower that we were all looking at and saying, wow, how that flower is going to be so amazing one day. It's going to be so beautiful. It's going to continue to grow. But then someone yanked it and now it's like, ooh, like it's now in this beautiful bouquet, right? And now guess what? Flowers, when you put them in a bouquet, they die. They look beautiful, but they die very quickly. And then they get tossed out because guess what? You've served your purpose and now you don't look pretty anymore.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
They're gonna replace you with more flowers.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think that that is a possibility in your case, number one. Number two, toxic positivity, that's a tough one
Mhm.
because I myself, I try to be very positive in
Mhm.
all cases, but I realize that not all people want positivity all the time. And
Mhm.
sometimes my own positivity forces people to question my genuine nature. Like, no one
Mm.
is that positive all the time, or you know, are you really sure you're happy or you're okay? Because like this bad thing just happened and you're just like trying to be super chill and positive about like
Right,
what
like a facade
some
almost.
people feel like I'm masking my true emotions. And what it really comes down to, and I think a lot of people do this, is people who do that positive moment and in moments where things are you should be like irate, those might be people who have the ability to regulate themselves and
Mhm.
control the output. Are they upset? Probably. I think it's human nature for everyone to get upset, right? But do I need to take it out on you? Do I need to and then there's also a thought process of, if I yell, what is that going to do? Other than turn you into my own personal punching bag. Because if I yell at you, what is the expected outcome of me yelling at you?
Right.
All
There's
I did
no
was get
good
my
that comes to
frustration out.
anyone.
I can tell you you're wrong and still be positive. Like, people have told me before you get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar, right? And
Mm,
I've talked to my wife the same way. I've said, like, I can get you to take out the trash and make you understand that this is my third time asking you. I can yell at you and say, are you stupid? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I've been asking you for 3 days now. Or I can say, can you please take out the trash? Because if you don't do it today, it will start to smell, we will get bugs, there will be like, I'm now explaining the consequences
mhm,
versus just me knowing the consequences and then not sharing it with you, but sharing my frustration is towards the consequences. The trash is going to smell. So I'm mad at that, but rather than me lashing out at you and saying, I'm more so saying, "If you do not do this now, here is what will happen to us."
mhm,
And that you can use to help push the person and say, listen, please, it doesn't make me feel good when I have to ask you 3 times to do something. Again, I'm sharing with you the consequences and the output rather than me yelling about it. So I think when people are super happy or they're super positive, it's just they have the ability to control
mhm,
their output a little bit. At the same time, I think it can be challenging because, even for my wife, it's like, okay, like are you not upset about that? Like, no, or she may have something that is concerning her, right? Like, for
mhm,
example, what may be happening in the world might be concerning to her, and it may have had her frazzled. For me, I'm just like, oh, okay, well, and there's a difference in emotion there, right? Like,
mhm,
you're more upset about this than I am, whereas I'm kind of more so, well, let me get more information before I
mhm,
conclude my emotions first. I've learned that allowing myself to react emotionally to everything is very physically, mentally, and emotionally draining. It
mhm,
will age you. It will also start to have a negative impact about how you feel about yourself and how you feel about the day, right? Because if you're emotionally triggered, you're gonna expect it. Like, I can't wait for the first thing to like. That's why if you ever
mhm.
seen like the videos of like these guys, it's like the smallest little inconvenience, and like, what,
Yeah.
like the smallest, like someone drops their keys on the floor. Gosh, darn it! It's like,
Straw that broke the camel's back kinda thing, yeah.
yeah, it's like like you're looking at it like, okay, dude, like it's not, but like for them, it's because they've trained their mind to that that reaction was more of a trained thing. Wasn't
Mhm,
because really dropping the keys wasn't really an inconvenience for them. It's more so you've trained your brain to treat any inconvenience as a big
mhm,
thing, no matter how big or small it is. So even though that dropping the keys is very small, your brain knows it as inconvenient means 10.
mhm,
React. Whereas for me, I've saw myself trending down that path and I said, I don't want to have an outburst every single time
mhm.
something doesn't go right. I also don't feel like I need to have an outburst to show people that I mean something. I find that having control over my emotions is actually the most boss thing I can do.
Mhm,
So I say all this to also conclude on like being super positive, although when the person is going through it, it can be a little overwhelming energy of like, dude,
mhm,
I'm going through it right now. Like I feel like the world's crashing and you're just trying to be like this bright sun. Like I don't need that right now. It's a tough one. I don't necessarily have the answers for
mhm.
that one, but I will definitely noodle on that more because that one does strike home for me because I do tend to be overly positive sometimes, but I also want to understand how to maybe be there for that person more who might be going through it and maybe they don't need the positivity. So I'm gonna noodle on that one and we're gonna come back to that.
I
But what
love
I
that.
want to do too is now we've made it through, to a point now through, you've gone through education and now you are a director at a really good company. Congratulations. Where you weren't diagnosed with autism until you were 27, but now you're around 24-ish, right?
Mhm,
So like how was that journey? Like was the job super easy for you? Like were you just crushing it or like was it like, oh gosh, this is really hard? Or did you come into the company like at a very entry level and you just like crushed it and you got pushed to a director. What was that journey?
Yeah, so, I've been working since I was 14, got my worker's permit, started, went the retail as opposed to like the fast food route kind of thing. So I had, been working customer service forever, and, heard about this company, Zappos. I applied when I was 17 and interviewed when I was 18. And I remember, and I also want to be very specific too, that this was Tony Hsieh's Zappos. This was back when Tony Hsieh was, CEO, bless his heart, I miss him every day. Back when he was alive and well, CEO of Zappos, he he embraced everyone. And it's kind of like what we talked about at school, where like the mosaic, the group of misfits that don't fit together that somehow make just the most beautiful picture. He was so about individuality. And on the surface, people saw, that they're like, Google or Microsoft. They have a nap room and crazy parties and, parades and stuff like that. But there was so much more at the core to that place of really, really like embracing people how they are and, lifting them up how they are so that they can flourish. So I started there, just a call center rep, customer service rep. And within 90 days, because there was a 90-day, probation period once you get on your first team. I just felt myself having so many ideas. And, I had worked in, previous corporations before where like, that's cute, you have an idea, but why don't you go fold some t-shirts or something? Like we have, 200 stores, we're all going to do it the same way. You're not going to do anything different kind of thing. So there was a little bit of hesitancy, but people were so encouraging. And there was literally a thing at Zappos where you had meetings where anyone in the company, no matter what level, could present an idea to try within, they called it holacracy. It was almost like a government meeting, if you will. And if it was safe enough to try, if it didn't set the company back in any way or hinder anything, they would give it a go. And that was so empowering. So I just decided, what do I like? What do I notice? What do I want to do? At that point, I was 18. I was living on my own, trying to figure out how to pay bills with a, boyfriend who wasn't the best person. And, just I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what I wanted to do. That wasn't an option for me. It wasn't what do you want to do? It was what do you got to do so you can get through everything. And so Zappos really opened my eyes to even a customer service rep is important. And that, after 90 days, I already had found a team that, I was like spending extra time with after my shift, just kind of learning what they do. And, right after that 90 days, they offered me a position. So I was, it's like shipping and receiving, if you will. But it was also, doing the office supplies for each of the floors for call reps, because we also did cards that reps would write to clients or to customers that would call in. So, hi, I'm calling to do a, exchange for this. It's a dress for an upcoming wedding or for my birthday. We would remember it. We would write them a little card, handwritten. Hey, happy birthday, from, it's Zappos, great talking to you. Hope the new dress works out kind of thing. And then also internal deliveries of, you order packages to work, we'll come take it right to your desk. So just really, it was so connection based.
Mm.
And I realized, I didn't have a passion necessarily for, shipping and receiving, if you will. I wasn't like really stoked to like sort through mail.
Mhm.
Actually, Pitney Bowes machines were mail machines. You feel pretty cool just, with like all the beepers
Yeah.
and oh yeah,
Yeah.
I felt really neat. But I
Yeah.
wasn't passionate about that as much as I realized how much I loved connection, and all of the different types of connections that you could have, be it, delivering a package to someone's desk or, talking on the phone with someone and finding out their exchanges for, a wedding, a funeral, a birthday, they're ordering baby clothes. And Zappos, during their, their QA scoring for phone calls, there was an actual section called PEC, which was personal emotional connection. And if you did not attempt to have some sort of connection with the customer outside of their order or Zappos,
Mhm.
that was something that you were graded on. If you hear a dog barking in the background, that could be something you could pick up on and be like, oh, I hear your dog barking. What kind of dog do you have? Mine's sleeping right behind me. Little things like that to show, they would say you're more than a box. You're more than your order, more than your username. And that essentially sparked like this lifelong like passion going forward of, oddly enough, people, which were the things that scared me the most in the entire world.
Mm,
I knew animals, I loved animals, I knew science. Everyone said, I like crocodiles more. They just try to kill you. People try to be your friend first, I think I told
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And
I love
that
that.
it was easier for me because I always knew, what they were gonna do. But I was realizing now that people were, if you looked at them almost in an observation way, you know, in an animal kingdom, comparing them to different species or even, interspecies, everyone was so unique. Everyone was so beautiful. Everyone was just so neat. And I started seeing, people that were, maybe mean on the phone, calling in pissed off about an order, like kind of like you said, the guy that drops his keys and flips out. It kind of made me start thinking, what happened before you flipped out? Are
Right.
you someone that flips out over dropping keys? Or are there so many big things in your life, on your heart, in your brain, that dropping the keys was literally the last thing that you can handle? And it made
Right.
me start seeing more to people, um, and just realizing like how important connection is, but also how unique it is.
Mhm.
And so Zappos not only gave me the place where, I could be myself and, explore things and flourish, but, how could I also put that into my work?
Mhm.
They had us do the, Myers-Briggs personality test. And
Yeah.
I thought that was so cool to do company-wide, embrace different ways of thinking and personalities. So I started taking, more workshops on the side of that. And, how do you apply business to psychology? Started getting, into like the marketing side of that to where, we were starting to send actual gifts to customers. You're having a baby, congratulations, that's awesome. We hang up the phone. A week later, you all of a sudden get a package to your door with a handwritten note from the rep you talked to. And there's a baby blanket and a bottle and a binky. And yeah, they have Zappos on them, but like, you didn't pay for this. There was no subscription. Some people were even returning for a refund. The company wasn't getting anything from it, but they created a connection.
Mhm.
And now all these people are going to come back to Zappos because like all I did was get pissed off. I yelled at them, returned, a onesie because it had a hole in it. And now all of a sudden I have a baby blanket from a company that like has never even met me.
It's
And then it
yeah.
makes you wanna tell other people, or they see the blanket there and it's like, "Where'd you get a Zappos blanket? How do I get one?" "Well, it's amazing. I talked to them on the phone and this happened," and it's word of mouth marketing.
Wow. Over anything else. So the product was you guys did sell products, but really the agents were the product, that connection that you're making, and you treated every single interaction as an opportunity. Being, okay, get more out of that call than what like, everybody should leave that call with more than they expected, right? You hear a dog barking in the background, connect with them on that. You hear that they sound frantic at work, connect on that. Like, be empathetic, but connect. It sounds like that was the biggest thing, and that connection led you to going kind of above and beyond, and from my own experience, when someone does that, it's like, ooh, it's kinda like, we're kind of in a relationship now. Like, I can't
Yeah,
really
yeah.
I don't think I can go to another company. 'Cause
Exactly, it creates
this was a little deep.
loyalty in a way. Yeah, but not loyalty like, I only wear, like, Nike or whatever, like,
Right,
name
right,
brand
right.
loyalty, but more so like, "Oh my god, these people are amazing, you have to go there." And
Right,
I love that, I love that, it's so authentic.
right. That's awesome. So, now you've clearly done a really good job there. You got promoted, right? And then now, we kind of approach year 27 of life, which is a beautiful year. What then comes the diagnosis of autism. What sparked that path or that curiosity? I mean, we talked about like, hey, you've always saw yourself a little bit differently, but
Mhm.
that doesn't some people for me, I would have just said, I'm different, like, in that ways,
Yeah.
but, like, it seems like you took it a step further and said, "I wanna explore this"? What gave you that
Yeah.
itch to wanna explore?
Honestly, I don't wanna say that Zappos gave me the itch to explore as much as the awareness that exploration was there, and it wasn't necessarily so much about myself at that point. More so I realized just kind of the power of connection, of, having that trust, that comfort, and that, like, candidness, and just, really, like, I guess how those things were.
Mhm.
That's definitely something that, was important. And then, with COVID happening, and Zappos eventually they, had to do a really big layoff, with the world being the way it was. Those were things that, kind of shook up my world a little bit. When I was 25, I think in 2020. And so I, wasn't diagnosed yet, but at this point in my life, I had been told as a kid, I was already told that I had ADHD.
Yeah,
Check that one off the list.
yeah,
I was told I was anxious. Didn't need to be told that one. I could have told you that one.
yeah.
And then I was told, you know, as at the self-discovery, probably in 2019 before COVID, I thought, okay, I'm doing really well in these things, but there are still times when all of a sudden I get sad out of nowhere. I get anxious out of nowhere. I'll go home at the end of the day and like want to cry, and I have no idea why.
Mhm,
And so, you go to your general physician, you go to a psychiatrist, whatever, and they were like, "Yep, you're bipolar." And I was like, "Yep, what? Okay." I was like, "Are you sure?" Because I don't, anger is something that's a little foreign to me. I get, sure, frustrated, but like angry is not, when you think of bipolar, sometimes I guess you think of, what, 0 to 100, happy, angry. And so that was like a little shocking for me, and it didn't feel right because they weren't mood swings, and maybe on the outside it may seem like it came on quickly, but there was such a buildup going on and such a pile of things that would lead to almost like these outbursts or like these meltdowns, for lack of better words. But you're the doctor, you're the psychiatrist, like you guys know way better than I do. So, yep, I guess I'm, bipolar. And then 2020 happens and COVID happens. And then all of a sudden, this company that I saw myself at for a long time, if not my life essentially, um, they were like, "Yeah, no, we don't have a place for you. Here's a severance package, best of luck." And, then Tony passed away. And, at that point, he was no longer, CEO. He had stepped down too and everything. And I was noticing the connections falling apart. Personally, at work, just the people were getting more connected, sure, because they were, all on the computer, all talking, all watching things, whatever. But there was just such a disconnect. And I was having really bad anxiety. I was having really bad panic attacks. And I, I had lost my job essentially. Who knows when you're going to get a new one during the pandemic? I didn't even know when I could go outside. I had
mm,
to have emergency surgery. I think I had to move, 4 or 5 times within a span of, 2, 3 years from 2020 to 2022. Things just got really, really crazy. And then, after Zappos, I went to a company where, I thought, okay, I'm all of a sudden in the finance industry and, kind of new to me, but, I have the service background. So maybe this was, what the universe had in store for me. And at that role, kind of doing the same thing, noticing, sure, we're doing really great with lead generation, with account generation, using accounts like crazy. And I'm here, here I am in customer service again, starting over after, however many months ago I was just, director of an entire department. And, just kind of feeling bummed out, sure, but like, hoping, I guess, or maybe even like naivety in that I was like, okay, it's another opportunity to start again, to notice something, to grow yourself somewhere else. And I thought everywhere would want to be like Zappos. I thought everywhere would want to embrace employees who, thought
mhm,
differently, not challenge them, but like challenge the status quo, as in like, what if we do it this way? I thought people loved that. I loved that. People loved that from me at Zappos. Whoever I hired, like if I was like, if you have a better way of doing this or insight, like let me know. Knowledge is power.
mhm,
And so I noticed, these trends, and I long story short, presented all of this to the CEO with the role, and I was like, "You guys need a retention role. You guys need someone focused on, making sure that the people who currently have accounts know that they are just as important and they're connected with you and that you're there for them."
Mhm.
Started a retention department. I was, pretty much the role holder in it, and millions of dollars, which is great when they stay in the account. Yeah, the company earns, interest or whatever, but also they stayed with us. Things as
Mhm.
simple as just being like, "Oh God, I know the IRS is really, really confusing." And some of the customers being like, "Are you allowed to say that?" And it's like, well, yeah, I'm human. You're human. I want you to know that this sucks. And I want you to
Yeah.
know that I'm here for you. That is literally my job, is to be here for you.
Yeah.
And I had all of these ideas, and, retention wise, it was great. But when I started pushing for more, be it, more ideas or more things we could do, but also I noticed more for myself, be it a promotion, maybe, higher pay, or, something. I mean, even as a director, honestly, the most I've made there was, $50,000 a year. As a director, the whole, females make less. I don't know if that was the case. I don't know what it was, but
No,
I
that was
certainly wasn't making
roughly
director money.
it's a lot
Yeah.
of responsibility for a lot of pay.
Yeah. And so the more I advocated for myself and the more I advocated for the clients and not just for the company making money, the less they wanted to listen to me. And then the more I became, difficult, they would say, if you will, but just because I was just asking, how do we do this? Or why do we do it this way? Or, I'm noticing this. Is there anything we can do? And they didn't like that. And I'm realizing that, a lot of companies, I read an
Mhm.
article the other day that said a lot of companies will say they want you to think outside the box. But the issue is that they don't actually want you to think outside the box. They just want you to decorate the box. And that, like, just like dagger, like it hit me so hard because I'm realizing not a lot of companies want people that think differently. They hire people that think the same way they do, and then they wonder why business stays the same, why
Right.
processes don't improve, why employees leave, why customers leave.
Right. So it's
Customer
in
businesses have the most valuable things available to them, and it's the customer and the people who talk to them.
right.
It's
So
such a big resource.
it's interesting. Remember we were talking about high school and like, okay, there's the big piece of the pie is everybody else, and there's
Mhm.
that small little group that's different. And for some
Mhm.
reason you gravitate. I think that same ideology is also in your career, whereas it's like you're trying to sit at the table with like the really cool kids and the jocks and the rock stars and everybody like that, and like you haven't found the table of like those people who are like significantly unique and who actually are looking for you just as much as
Mhm.
you're searching for them. They're like, we wish we had someone here like us, and they're looking for you and you're searching for them, and the universe is going to pair you two together, and when it does, it's going to be amazing. But I think that might also be like the challenge that you may have experienced is like, again, it's like you're in them with the cool kids, but you're like, hey, like, you guys want to talk about like walking to the moon? And they're like looking at you like, what? Like,
What?
no,
Yeah.
let's let's talk about like, can we talk
What
about like
everyone else is talking about.
Laguna Beach? Can we talk about Laguna Beach like everybody else does? Like, let's just be normal. Like, let's be normal.
Right.
And let's have a normal conversation, which is let's have a conversation that doesn't necessarily bear a lot of fruit, but it's just something that we can talk about. And when you're saying things like, I wonder how many screws it took to build this bridge, and like you're just like in your mind trying to like do the math and like it occupies your mind all day. Or when you're thinking about like, I wonder how many planes are in the sky right now.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. I
that's
guarantee there's a bird who can fly, but maybe he's a little nervous and afraid of heights because he, like, tripped once, like, on his nest or something, and he was like, "What if there's a bird that's afraid of heights? He can
yeah,
fly, but he's terrified." I think of these things all the time, and there's comfort, sure, in being like everyone else and not blending in that way, but there's comfort in being in a room of a bunch of individuals knowing that there's no judgment there because everyone's different. So sure,
Mhm.
you can sit with the people who are all talking about all of the things that you guys already have in common. I found so much more joy and stimulation and insight when I would sit with people who, yeah, okay, sure, maybe they, watch that show or listen to this band, but like I want to sit with someone who listens to music that's different than me because they might show me a song I've never heard before that I love,
Mhm.
or a book, or think about, I think about my best friend all the time who, he and I worked together, and when we were hiring people, he would always ask 2 questions. The first one is, "How many basketballs do you think would fit into this room?" And it's like, I asked him why he would ask people that, and he's like, "Well, you see how people think of things, are they thinking logically? Are they, how are they figuring it out? Are they, like, oh, I don't know, in their head counting? Are they judging, like, you can tell so much about a person by a hypothetical." So he would
Mhm.
do that, and then he would ask, "If you could have dinner with anyone, famous, not famous, alive, not alive, if you could have dinner with anyone, what would you have for dinner?" And people would, like, or be like, "Abraham Lincoln," and it's like, that's weird. And it makes them, you're realizing how deeply are they listening to me before they respond?
Mhm.
How thoughtful is this person in actually comprehending and hearing what someone has to say before they think of a response? How
Mhm.
quick are they? But
Mhm.
also, did that make them uncomfortable? Or
Mhm.
was that so fun for them that, like, you totally bamboozled them? And
Mhm.
it was so cool to see people think differently or give different answers. And, like, yeah, sure, everyone knows, literally, I can't even name anyone on the top 40s right now. That's so sad. That's how goofy I am. Everyone knows, okay, we'll say Ed Sheeran, for example,
Mhm.
but have you heard of this band Peach Pit?
Mhm.
And yeah, stuff like that. And I hope I'm never fully, completely satisfied in life because I'm so afraid that I'll stop
Mhm.
looking and learning
Yep.
and seeking. And so I hope companies kind of start to adopt that ideation too of, like, I hope we never stop learning and growing and changing. I hope we always, challenge ourselves as well. That's just as important as, challenging an industry. Excuse me. Challenging yourselves, wondering, how you compare to others, sure, but how can you improve, just on your own?
Mhm.
If your employees are happy, they'll probably do better in the company and for the customers. And if the customers are happy, it's probably going to make business do better. But if
Mhm.
you're only focused on making money, the customers are know that they will know that, they're only a source of making money, and
Right.
employees know that they're only there to make you money.
Right.
No
And
one's invested.
I had a gentleman on a previous episode where we were talking about similar, like, we were talking about company policies, right? Are there for
Mhm.
it's like if you are so fixated on the company so much, it's gonna bleed into your employees, and then your employees are gonna bleed that into the customer. Depends on what your goals are, right? Like, are you looking to keep customers, or are you just like, you don't have to worry about it? It kinda depends, but I do feel like that's where companies need to kind of evaluate, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's culture has a direct impact on your bottom line.
Yeah.
Culture from the top has a direct impact from your bottom line. If you are encouraging free thoughts, if you're encouraging all different ideas, if you are encouraging people to make decisions without needing to always check with a manager, you're
Mhm.
going to see the results because customers are going to feel like, wow, this person actually cares about me.
Yeah.
And the employees are going to be like, hey, I think there's a better way to do this. And the reason why I think there's a better way is because I'm so close to it, right?
Well, and they care about it.
And I
If you're
care.
trying to improve something, you care about it actually improving. But if you're
Yeah.
just there for the job, it's just gonna be like, "Yeah, whatever, I'm just clock in, clock out here for the paycheck. I don't care whether the business does well or the customer is happy." Yeah. I would love to have an employee say, "What if we do this instead of this?" Because that shows that they're literally taking the time outside of their role to think of how to improve it, and that is so exciting. And
Right.
imagine how different the experience would be in a company if during the onboarding process, you do the interview, you get hired, you're going through onboarding. If you were asked, what is your communication style? What is your Myers-Briggs scores? Like, take your personality test and share it with us. Do you prefer, video or audio? Are you a visual learner or do you like to read? Do you prefer talking in the mornings versus afternoons? Just little things like that. I mean, it would just change everything because it shows not only do they value how you are and, how you think, but then they also want to approach you in that way. And then it makes you want to approach them in that way.
Right.
It can be shared to different colleagues or different managers, and kind of teach you. It could be like a public profile. You're going to reach out to someone new and you see, they prefer being reached out to in the morning. Just different things like that. I think if you embrace the individual as an individual, as
Hmm.
opposed to embracing individuals into your box or your idea and like making them fit, it would change the workplace. Just like in the world, there's something called the double empathy problem with autism, where it's, wow, it must be really hard to be autistic. Here are different ways to make you less autistic or to blend in a little bit better. And it's, I'm sorry that you feel that way. What can I do to make you more normal? As opposed to, what if the world were just more autistic friendly? You
Yeah,
know?
and thank you for bringing that because that kind of segues us into this, right? Like,
Mhm.
we can't change autism, right? It's not, if we could change it, then I don't think people who have
I
autism.
have my days, yeah.
Yeah. So with that said, and talking about making the world more autistic friendly, and I'm thinking about like, okay, the whole premise here, right? Like in this world where AI is maturing and we're getting all types of resources and tools, have you ever thought about like what does an autistic friendly role look like? So let's say regardless if it's president, VP of a company, whether you're in customer service or you are collecting tickets at Disney World, right? Like if there
Mhm.
were just like maybe like a few like points that generally speaking would help make a role autistic friendly, what would they be? Have you ever thought about that?
Have. I have, and, I think that's something where originally I was thinking, what would be a good role for an autistic person? And then I kind of, again, I almost challenged myself in that of, okay, well then, in a perfect world, if that happens down the road, then is it just those are autistic jobs? Those are just for autistic people, and then that again is another separator. It's another, segregator. It's just something that, it still is like a label, if you will.
Hmm.
And so I think I'm realizing that if instead of me having to learn how to fit into a certain mold, I think
Hmm.
that if companies and coworkers and, everyone really learned that there are so many different types of molds and so many different liquids that can go in them and colors and decorations and shapes and sizes, everything would be so different if people just took the time to ask your preference. I love on applications when it's like, is it okay if we text you? Or, do you prefer like, oh god, doctor's appointments. Do you
Hmm.
prefer call or text? There is nothing scarier to an autistic person than an unsolicited phone call. Even my family knows this. If you call me without texting me that you're calling me, I'm going to assume that someone is dead. It is just one of those things where it's
Yeah.
unsolicited socialization. I'm like,
In fairness, I feel like that's in fairness, I also am the same way. Like I don't like it's weird, right? Because
why are you
I'm
calling me?
now like you have to text me first before you call me.
Yeah.
Don't just
Yeah.
don't just call my phone unannounced. That's intrusive.
Exactly. And and you can think of that as, maybe that's just how technology has progressed, but people are open to technology progressing, and there's, handicapped bathrooms everywhere. Or, it's literally in, architecture codes that it has to be, handicap accessible. There are things where the world is changing to make it accessible. And so even something as simple as, do you prefer I'm sorry, do you prefer call, text, or email?
Mhm.
Just asking that question and knowing someone cares enough to ask me my preference already makes me feel at the same level. People asking me my communication style.
Hmm.
Even you asking me to be on this podcast to share my ideas and my thoughts and feelings as an autistic professional who ultimately right now is unemployed, it made me feel so validated and so valued as a person and at an equal level because it wasn't, you telling me what I needed to do or me asking for help for what I needed, but it was just tell me about you and how you think and how your brain works. And I think that if instead of trying to make roles for autistic people, if the workplace were just more, I don't even want to say autistic friendly, I just want to say individual friendly or people friendly,
Yeah.
it would it would change everything to embrace people as authentic individuals.
Yeah.
It would just be awesome to be asked that, to be more than a username, an employee ID. Just know that I matter enough for you to wanna ask, "Hey, should I call or text you?" It's like, "Thanks, my guy. That's awesome, and text me, please."
Snap for you again because I feel like you just hit a gem. So it's really the interesting thing that you're unfolding here is it's not about making the workplace more autistic friendly. It's just about making the workplace more human friendly. Because if you make it more human friendly, then you don't have to worry about who's autistic and who's not.
Mhm,
You're actually changing the environment to be very inclusive. So therefore you don't have to worry about, okay, here's you people go to the left and you people go to the right. No,
mhm,
James doesn't like calls after 3 o'clock. Cheyenne likes emails over calling, right?
mhm,
That's their preference. Just like when you had to take these personality tests to understand. So, as companies, we need to kind of also personality test ourselves and say, okay, are we making our company and as inclusive as possible?
mhm,
Is really what it is. So, like, that's the key to helping the I'm just gonna say autistic community, and I mean that
mhm,
in a way of, like, without slapping a label, I'm just trying to see if how do I can I identify a group of people, but
mhm.
to make the autistic community say, "Hey, like, okay, this is welcoming to us," it's just make a big circle that
Yeah,
includes everybody, and
exactly,
then you don't have to worry.
exactly.
So that is how is it do you feel like that's the secret sauce? Is that the sauce that's going to help the autistic community? Is that we take a step back and we say, am I making this role? Am I making this company to all walks of life? And now there might be roles where, hey, look, you just gotta have certain abilities, like maybe like a doctor. Like, yeah, you want someone who's has gone through school who knows what they're doing. Fair enough, right? But there's a huge population, probably the bigger slice of the pie, where it doesn't matter if you are autistic, have ADD, have one leg, one eye, no ears. Like you can do the role, but how do we make sure that that is conveyed to the world, right? So, for
Right.
example, like I may have a role in my company that says, okay, this job requires you to do data entry. Fair enough. How do I now I may get a lot of candidates who speak really well, who present themselves, do all these different things. And then I may have one candidate super, super shy,
Mhm,
doesn't necessarily like to speak much, doesn't like to have a lot of spotlight on them. But let's go back to the role, right? The role doesn't require you to have a spotlight on you. Although these candidates came in super polished and they could probably give the best public speech in the world,
mhm,
and they look great. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for someone who's going to be the best data entry person. And if I'm using my mind, I almost feel like now this is where the superpower comes in, right? The person who is actually shy actually is probably their superpower because that means they're going to be less distracted. They're going to be more focused. They're not going to have side conversations a lot, which means that the data entry role is something that they're going to absolutely do phenomenal at. But if I don't have the lens where I'm not looking at your shyness as a negative. I'm looking to it as, oh, dude, you're going to be super focused. That's
exactly.
your
Or it
advantage.
won't be fabricated because you're not worried about attention or
Mhm.
image or, credit or anything, so
Yeah.
1, you'll probably give accurate data, but 2, you're honestly probably the person I'd like to hear hard news from a little bit more. There are some
Right.
people who love sugarcoating, and then some people who are like, "Give me the facts so I can handle it." Just got knee surgery last year, and I told my doctor, "Some people want you to tell them it's gonna be fine. You're gonna be okay. People feel better in just a couple months." I told her, "That does not ever make me feel better. It does not help me at all. I want you to tell me, set up my expectations. I would rather be pleasantly surprised that it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be than not pleasantly surprised." And, some people respond differently, and I think when you learn what works for other people, a personal trainer, some people might, do well with encouragement of like, "Hey, I'm so proud of you. One more, you're doing great." And then another person might deal with like, "Come on, that's all you got. Give me one more," but like some people respond to different things. And so, it really is, like you said, a superpower. That shy person might think going forward that they're bad at data collection just because someone told them or didn't choose them, or didn't say they presented it well.
Right.
And there's a quote I had shared with you, when we talked last about, or I think it was Albert Einstein that said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to believe, its whole life that it's stupid. And so I think that if companies give people a place to be themselves, which is also why I love the remote culture right now, because you can go work at a coffee shop with a bunch of people if you want. You can go to a
Mhm.
co-working space. If you like people, you can be around people. But if you also, maybe you like your certain chair and you can sit better in it. Maybe, you have your plants around you and that kind of makes you a little calm. My dog's right behind me. If my dog's there, everything's right in the world. If
Mhm.
you give people the environment they need, just like the plant in which to flourish, your company, your garden, your whatever is going to be beautiful. It's going to be thriving, and it's going to be absolutely unique because you're not cutting all the shrubs to look the same way, you're not planting the same things, you're not paving
Mhm.
it the same way that other garden is, you're just letting it grow as it does. And
Mhm.
I would so much rather have a wild forest than like a, shrubbery, cut arches and, fresh cut grass, and I think there's so much beauty in just natural, in chaos, in just how things are. And I think if people were challenged more to find what is good about me and what sets me apart and what do I have to offer, as opposed to how do I fit in or how can I be like everyone else? And then also seeing other people in that way of what makes this person special and unique, or this person's having a bad day, instead of being like, what a jerk, it's like, God, I wonder what made their day so hard.
Yeah.
It's
Interesting.
changed my interactions with people in public
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
honestly.
You also kind of strike the nerve. It's like not looking to see if that person's a fit. See what makes them unique. Flip this thinking.
Yeah.
We always think in companies where we say, "This person's a good fit for this or for this per,"
Mhm.
but, like but saying you are a good fit means, like, I'm just again, I'm taking you and I'm plugging you in and you're just gonna fit snug.
Yeah.
But what if we start asking, "Okay, well, what makes that person so special for this role?" It changes the thought process,
Yeah.
right?
Or
I'm gonna take
how would
that
we do well together?
right. I'm gonna
Yeah.
take that same scenario, right? The data entry person, the person who has autism versus everybody else who's like 5-star, like can
Mhm.
give the best speech on earth, right? It's like you look at these people, you're like, on one hand, you can look at the people and say, except for the person who has autism, but you can say, these guys all look like they would be a good fit, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't, that's just very blah. That's like, yeah, like you, any one of you can fit in.
Yeah.
But now if I say, which one of these candidates is the most unique to you? Or what's the unique attribute of each person? What that
Mhm.
does, to be honest with you, is it forces more effort on my side to wanting to know you. Because
Mhm.
if I'm flipping the philosophy of I'm just trying to find a good fit to I'm trying
Right.
to find whoever's most unique for this role. Finding a good fit, again, it's about plug and play, right? That's really
Yeah.
easy, right?
When you have a
But now you
preconceived
take something
notion.
that has, like, different things. There's, like then I'm gonna say, "Well, this person's really unique because of this," right? I find that she actually doesn't like to socialize a lot, and because she doesn't like to socialize a lot now some people may look at that as like, "We can't have someone who doesn't like to socialize on our team. We can't have that." Like, some people will say, "That's not a cultural fit." I think it's not a cultural fit if you expect everyone to, again, now you're expecting everyone to be the same, right?
Yeah,
And if
if they
you
don't
have
fit your culture.
right, if you expect everyone in this culture to be the same, our business as a whole will never evolve because
Mhm.
if we're all moving like a sea of fish, then there's gonna be no outside the box thinking, right? Now, she's not a social person, but she's really good at data, and I guarantee now the thing we would miss by not taking the extra step is we would miss to explore the additional skills she has as it
Mhm.
pertains to data and how she might be able to create models and proactively find problems. Now, is she going to be the one to say, okay, I'm ready to have a company-wide meeting and talk about this? No. But will she bring it to you? And will it have been really thorough and thought through? Probably. But we would have missed that because we're saying we want the fit. And if you say, I'm going to say one more thing. If you say you want the fit, then that's also saying that you don't care whatever you're missing on what else that person can bring to the table. Because again, you're just trying to fit you into something. You're not looking at, well, wow, this person is extremely unique and who knows what else they may come up with. You're looking at them as like, are you checking all the boxes? So basically, it's like we've got to expand our recruiting philosophy to be
Yeah.
more of trying to find out what makes them unique, less of are you going to be a good fit? Sure, you need someone who's going to definitely be a good fit to an extent, right? You can't like come in here and be like, I worship all the worst things in life and I want to bring death to this company. Like that's not
Right.
gonna be a good fit, right?
Right.
Generally speaking, if it's like, "Hey, I just wanna do I know how to do data really well, and,
Mm,
like, that is, like, what I can bring to your company in all aspects of data," then that's to me, that's the ideal person, not the person who's like, "Yeah, I fit perfectly here." But the thing is you just fit into that hole.
yeah, it's just like so many things in life, it's changing the dialogue around
Yeah,
it. It's, hiring for the perfect fit. How can this person fit in here? If you can change that to imagine looking at people's resumes and going through interviews thinking, "What can this person bring? What can this person add?" Instead of, "How can this person fit into the company?"
right.
Changes everything.
It
If
does.
even down to the interactions with the customers. If you stop thinking about it's you versus the customer, you're explaining this to them, they don't understand. It's the customer versus you. As soon as you bring everything to one level and you let them know, I'm sorry you're dealing with this, even if it's not your fault, but like, I'm really sorry. Human connection, relativity, that must suck to be in that situation. I'm going to go ahead and help you. You and me, we got this. As soon as it is not you versus them and it
Mhm,
is you and them versus the problem, it's inclusive. And same thing with, we'll say the autistic community, but even so much so it's now kind of changing to like there's like neurodivergence and neurotypical, which even that still is like a aren't kind of thing. And so what if we just looked at humans as humans? And neurotypicals, people without autism, are even on the spectrum. If you think of a dimmer on a light switch, there's always going to be a point where the light is all the way off, all the way on, and everything else in between. So if instead of putting everything with just the light on one switch, and then just light off on another, it doesn't make sense. Put it all on one. So
mhm,
a neurotypical is on the same spectrum as a neurodivergent person.
mhm,
It's just the human spectrum. And if you can embrace everyone as unique, as thinking differently, what can you bring to this? What experiences do you have? What thought patterns do you have? What can you add to this, to my life, to my work? As opposed to like, what are you going to cost me? Do you fit what I need?
mhm,
Just really changing those conversations, I think, would be beneficial to the companies and to the customers, employees, but also beneficial to the people who don't feel they've had that place or that space.
mhm.
Like I said, even this podcast, I haven't announced to anyone really other than, few close people that I have found out I'm autistic. This podcast, if you will, is coming out for me in
I
a way,
know.
and it's a
Welcome.
It's a little
Yeah,
scary.
you're free,
Here
liberate.
we are. But it's, embracing that, there's a power in it. I feel really, really powerful about that. And it's changed that conversation. And I have that space to talk about it. And now I feel the calling to give other people that space to talk about it. So I'm going to advocate for humans, not even just autism. I'm
Yeah,
advocating for humans.
I think that's awesome. To be honest with you, I think there's a lot of CEOs out there who are autistic, right? There's a lot of brilliant people who are extremely successful and they're autistic. I think it's undiagnosed autism,
Mhm.
but I have seen certain cases where I'm like, yeah, I think there might be on the spectrum. That quirkiness about them, I think that it's like the quirkiness is like it's almost like a light blasting off them. Like you see like a glimmer
Yeah.
in their
You have
eye,
like a radar. Yeah.
and you're like, oh,
Huh.
I know that. Look, that is, dude. It's like you want to hug them, and
100%.
And I feel like in this world, if you continue doing what you're doing in a sense of like liberating yourself, but making others feel like it's okay. Like this is not a death sentence. This is not a horrific label. This is just what makes me unique. Just
Mhm.
like me having black hair makes me unique. Like
Right.
me having living in this state makes me unique, right? I have shoes that only I have. That makes me like that's just an attribute that makes you unique, right? And the world should not look at it as like a hindrance, but more of a
Mhm.
how do we make this inclusive? Because we keep trying to like go around this and not include it into the circle and what include it in the circle. Like
Yeah.
we're missing out. Like if we did a study on how many billionaires and how many CEOs are autistic, I feel like the numbers would be overwhelming and people would be so.
Yeah.
I would love to do a study on how many people who work at NASA are autistic.
Oh
Okay.
my
I bet
god,
you
yes.
those figures would also be like, oh, wow. Right.
Well, and on the flip side, how many people could have been CEOs, but because they were overlooked because they're autistic, they're not? There's how many people aren't high masking enough to, get to that level.
Mm,
And so I think when it's like the whole representation matters. And if you do see a CEO that has autism, all of a sudden, like that's a possibility for you. And that's so cool. So
yeah.
if you do that study of CEOs, you let me know because
I think there would be an explosion of crazy successful businesses if more people found that out. One last question for you and then I will let you go. And I really do appreciate you spending time with me here. But like in your own journey and as you're looking to get back into the workforce and then you're applying and are you sharing that you have autism either on your resume or in your interviews?
it's kind of like know your audience, the room kind of thing at this point. I definitely I'll bring it up for sure as I bring psychology into business.
Hmm.
So sometimes I'll just kind of use the term of being neurodivergent, or maybe if it doesn't seem like they're as open, I'll just say as someone who is really observant of, personality types or has taken time to, research the different personality types and stuff like that, that, I'm really passionate about applying psychology into business for your employees and for your customers.
Hmm.
But it's almost kind of taboo at this point, a little bit still, it feels like. Even in the demographic surveys, when, it's like, do you have a disability? Autism is listed on there. And I just put, I don't wish to answer this one just in case, because you never know.
Hmm.
But God, if they were, I mean, if they were open to it, then yeah. But I've also had the experience of telling someone I'm neurodivergent and them being like, "That's so cool," and embracing it and being like, "Oh my God, me too," which you also hear a lot too. And then 2 months into the job, it definitely was not that way, and saying I'm safe to come to and give feedback and tell me what you need, and it was not safe, and so I'd love to have a confident answer for your question, but I think I'm still in that point of
Figuring it out.
it sucks to know when to say it and when to not because you should just be able to, but then at the same time, you shouldn't have to. I should just be able to talk about how my brain works and not have to be like, by the way, I'm autistic, just so you know. And I'm still kind of going going back and forth on that and the best way to kind of go about it. But I definitely let people know that, I'm passionate about psychology in the workplace and bringing different points of view to
Yeah.
different people.
I'll share this. When you told me about, or you were explaining the psychology to me, I leaned in because I was like, a superhero power, a superhero. Like, I leaned into that so hard. So I feel like if you come across in your interviews the right person, take this with a grain of salt because I also don't want to lead you down the wrong path. I'm just gonna say this is how if you were interviewing with me and you told me, I'm like, tell me more.
I'm the same way, yes. And then do I wanna work for someone who doesn't lean in when I say something like that,
Right.
you know?
Can you use now I'm gonna challenge you again. Can you use this superpower of yours as also a filtration system that says, "I'm gonna tell everyone, and those who don't accept it, thank you, because you saved me from potentially going into a place where you were going to break me down and destroy me, and you weren't gonna see my light, and you weren't gonna see my power. But those who do lean in, thank you again because you do see the light, and now I'm also leaning in because we're leaning in together." So when you have that moment of you're saying, "I'm trying to read the room," it's tough. Again, I'm talking from a different lens because you're looking for, a job. So it's like your approach may also be tempered with I also need to work. So it's like it's a tough scenario and I empathize with that. But I will say if you do come across if you do have the option, leverage your superpower. It's your superpower. Don't dim your light for anybody. If they can't handle your light, then that's okay. They are telling you you're too much of a rock star. We can't have Superman here because we don't know how to handle it. We don't know how to be around a superhero, and that's fine. Some people can't do that. No shade, no knock on them. But there are some people who are gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, you're the savior we've been waiting for," and
Right.
they're gonna be embrace you and they're gonna roll out the red carpet. So I will leave you with that because I know that yes, as unique as a person as I am, I know there's more of me out there and you're gonna come
Mhm.
across more of that. It may not seem that way all the time. And I just like I was, we were sharing the high school story, right? There was that minority. I might be the minority and we may be the minority, but it's I just remember when I found them and they found me, it was like, "Where have you been? And where have you" we've been searching
Mhm.
for each other, and we've
All the
been
minorities are looking to each other, and the
we're
minority is
looking
the
for each other.
majority.
But if the minorities are also walking around I don't want anyone to know I'm a minority, then we won't find each other either.
Exactly.
So that's the challenge.
Exactly. I love that, and I think that this was a great opportunity for me to embrace that, to have someone ask me how it works and also challenge my thinking and suggest things. And even in, just these last couple minutes of you saying that the idea and the possibility of talking to a hiring manager and seeing them lean forward when I see that, it fills my soul with so much excitement, and that is so worth waiting for. And you know, I think for me, I appreciate you leaving me with that. And then I think, I'll kind of piggyback on that and, leave this for everyone else is, you don't need to temper yourself down necessarily for everyone. I hear the saying all the time, you might not be everyone's cup of tea. And I think that's fine because I would much rather find someone who prefers it this way than someone who has to wait for me to cool off, that says I'm too strong, maybe I was steeped too little, too long. I don't want to wait until I have become tolerable for someone, as opposed to find someone who prefers their tea that way or can tolerate that heat. So
Mm,
I thank you for that because I think you've also kind of given me that, that excitement that's there as opposed to just like the nervousness of it of, it's scary, it's nerve-wracking. Yeah, hell, I need a job, but the possibility of that acceptance and that excitement is,
yeah.
yeah, I'm just excited. And I just thank you for the opportunity to speak about all of this and share.
Yeah.
And it's helped me a lot. And I hope that, there are other people out there who maybe are in the same journey and don't realize. And, I'm here if anyone wants to talk or,
Yeah.
has questions. Please reach
Yeah.
out.
So we'll definitely tag you, and we'll publish a way in getting in contact with Cheyenne if you wanna connect, if you wanna meet with her and go get coffee together, if you're a recruiter and you wanna take her out for coffee, or you wanna just have a FaceTime session and just talk about absolutely nothing. I will definitely we'll talk, Shy, and we'll figure out a way for people to safely be able to get in touch with you. I will continue to also keep my eyes and ears peeled out there for you. So as I hear things, I will definitely share them with you. I think that if any recruiter watches this video and you're like, I need a very unique person, like just have a conversation with Shy, regardless of the role. Hey, I just wanted to talk and pick your brain, see what her philosophies are, less of, is she a fit for something? See how she thinks. And then that will help you understand who she is and where she can help your company, help the role, etc. And Shy, I'll communicate with you offline, but like we'll find a way for also, like I said, people to get in touch with you for both like to connect and for professional reasons as well. So
Awesome.
just
Yeah,
thank
I
you so much.
appreciate that. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And yeah, really, I like you said, connecting with that too, but even, I'm I'm a scientist. I'm a, zookeeper. I do wildlife rescue, even things, if your preference is texting or email and not calling, whatever it
Yeah.
is, there are just so many things in the world that I love and so many things that I don't know that I love yet. Or maybe things I didn't think I loved or just don't know about. I am open to connections, to learning, to hiring, to whatever. And at the same time, too, I'm going to tell everyone about you because you're just wonderful. You're absolutely wonderful. And thanks for giving a platform to people so candidly and easy, comfortably.
Yeah. 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 And you were awesome. So thank you again.